23andMe is officially filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and many customers of the popular Ancestry company are now a bit concerned about what it means for their very sensitive, very personal data. Here to talk all about it is a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, Rolf Winkler. Rolf, really appreciate your time and grateful for you to be here. First, what led to 23andMe actually being forced to file for bankruptcy? What went wrong?
Oh, well, they ran out of money, right? That's what always happens. But look, this is a company that's been around for 20 years and had raised 1.4 billion in that time and eventually just spent it all. And they had a few problems. The one is that their core DNA testing business, it's the kind of thing you only have to do once. So there's no recurring revenue associated with it. It doesn't make money. They wanted to take this data set that they had collected and turn it into a drug development business. And that could theoretically still work over a longer timeline. The problem is it's incredibly expensive, and it takes many years to get drugs to market successfully. And that's not something they have a lot of time to do because, as your viewers know, interest rates are high. Investors aren't interested in risky biotech businesses, which is what 23 essentially made itself. So it's hard to raise a lot of capital to support that kind of business, and they ran out of money.
Fascinated your thoughts on this next part. As part of the bankruptcy proceedings, do you suspect this data to be sold or transferred to another company? And who would most be interested in this type of sensitive genetic data?
That is a great question. And, I don't have a good answer for you. There are some competing genetics companies that will probably bid. Anne Wojcicki really wants it as much as, she's put in 2 bids and those have been rejected. First by a friendly board that basically her investor allies and her people rejected a bid and then resigned as a unit last September. Then they brought on new directors whom they had to pay $800,000 up front to attract to get there. And then they rejected a bid that she did earlier this month. There was another sort of bid in there from an investor partner that she had secured, but then that investor partner, a week after that bid went in, actually backed out. And it's not clear why. They just said they didn't want to go forward. But anyway, despite all those setbacks, Anne Wojcicki is very much in the mix here and still really wants to buy the asset. So it's really anyone's guess.
Rolf, not to needlessly catastrophize this, but I wonder if you've thought through a potential worst case scenario for where this data goes.
That's hard to say. And the other question I've got is, what are the risks we're really thinking about here? Your hackers want your bank account information. There's not a lot they're going to do with your DNA. They can't access a financial account of yours. I think in America, there's this interesting psychological question where, do you remember the Golden State Killer case?
Sure.
Maybe that was 2017 when here in California they solved a many years old serial murder cold case because they found it connected a guy to DNA through a database. It wasn't 23andMe, it was another one. But the reaction to that was a lot of like, oh my God, they can do that? Which was very interesting psychologically for America and Americans, because you'd think, oh, great, they solved this cold case. They caught this guy who killed a bunch of people. But that wasn't people's reaction. It was like, oh my God, like, where's my data? As if we all sort of are closet serial killers, which is kind of, is that some, maybe there's something about, I think, future-proofing yourself. Like, we don't know where our DNA could end up, what it could be used for 10, 15, 20 years from now. And so people are just like, oh, this was a parlor trick I did a few years ago because somebody gave it to me as a stocking stuffer. And maybe, I don't know, was it really smart of me to do that? Maybe I should claw my data back. There's just a lot of uncertainty. No one really knows what could happen. So as far as a worst case, I don't think any of us really know. We're just sort of like, well, we can't control it, so let's try to put this genie back in the box, which may be impossible, but...
And you kind of addressed where I want to ask my next question, which is that you do hear these stories of these old cold cases that get kind of successfully tracked down. If law enforcement has access to this, is there any suggestion already at this stage of what we know in just the last few days that this might increase the ease with which law enforcement agencies at the federal or state level might be able to access this data now more easily than they could before the company filed for bankruptcy.
You mean as far as getting 23andMe's data
Yes.
specifically? I can't answer. I don't
Okay.
know. 23andMe, you'd have to go on their website to look at their privacy policy. My sense is they don't turn over data. You'd really have to check. I don't know if they never turn it over or if they only do it with a legit warrant. They're careful. There are other databases that actively recruit people and say, please contribute your data to help law enforcement. And that is not something 23andMe does. And the other issue is, I think there are so many samples out there in some of those public databases that, look, if you've committed a crime and left your DNA at the scene, it's probably not too hard to go through some of those public databases to at least get pretty close to some of your relatives and track you back. So I don't know if the 23andMe database specifically would move the needle in a big way for law enforcement, but I can't say I know that.
Rolf, how easy is it for people to delete their data?
That's a question. There's a process in the state of California. Our attorney general on Friday, a couple days before this bankruptcy filing happened, put out a release, a reminder that people in the state of California, anyway, have a right to delete their data on these services. And 23andMe, and here's the steps to do that. And 23andMe makes that possible. Now, a lot of people have reported on social media and to us that they're struggling to get that through, to make that happen, and to confirm it has happened. And the question really is, are their systems overloaded? They say, I think they're going to respect these deletion requests, and that's something they've honored in the past. So maybe if people stick with it, keep trying, eventually it'll go through. But yeah, there are definitely a lot of reports out there that people are struggling to do it quickly.
Any suggestion of what might happen to people who have already paid for 23andMe services, may have already started the process, let's say in the last few weeks or the last month, but have yet to receive their results?
Well, there's debtor in possession financing here, so it's not like the business shuts down overnight. I would imagine that if you just sent in your spit kit and you're waiting for results, that they aren't going to stop immediately. But that's also one of those things that's to be worked out probably in the bankruptcy process.
What are the other top companies in a similar position or a comparable space to 23andMe? And is there any idea that what has happened to this particular company may also happen to others at some point?
Oh, you mean, are there going to be other bankruptcies here? That's hard to say. I can say, look, the genetic space is there's a lot of different kinds of companies out there that range from ones that provide ancestry information to ones that provide health information and then medical grade health information. 23andMe was somewhere in between. They gave you your ancestry and then they gave you some limited health information. But there are companies that are out there that are doing medical grade tests that examine a much larger chunk of your DNA. If your DNA was a big library, 23andMe's technology would look at a few letters on a few pages in a few books in the library, versus a whole genome, which is mapping every letter on every page in the entire library. There's a lot of information that a 23andMe test could give you, but there are other tests out there that can give you more.
I know it's still pretty early in this story overall, but I wonder if there's any suggestion yet of potential regulatory action, the role of government to step in and ensure that this type of genetic privacy data remains private, or if you've heard any kind of chatter like that yet from, I assume, let's say, federal members of Congress.
Yeah, there's a bill that I believe has been proposed, Bill Cassidy in Louisiana, I think it is. And I think that bill is designed to give people more control over their DNA data. So who knows? Maybe something like that gives something like this gives that a little bit of a boost. But it's definitely kind of a little balkanized. The rules for how this data is treated are not uniform across the country.
Sure. Finally, Rolf, since you've done such great work on this story, I wonder, is there any part of the 23andMe saga here as of late that you think we should be paying a little bit more attention to?
Any part of the saga that's more that you should pay more attention to? I mean, depends. If you're a user and you're concerned about your data, I guess paying attention to how you can delete it, if that's something you want to do, is a concern. The story of Ann Wojcicki, the founder, is fascinating. Look, this is a person who has been at this company 20 years and has a giant vision. She wants to cure cancer, not cure cancer, but develop cancer treatments, right? Which, unlike a lot of other Silicon Valley companies, this is not a unique story. Startups fail all the time. This one's been around a long time, but they hit the skids. But it's not real estate or something that we don't care about. Like these 23andMe has its heart in a good place, and it'll be interesting to see. Look, she's had a couple bids rejected, but she still says in a statement she released that she believes in the mission. She wants to secure the assets, and she still thinks she can make this happen. It might be good for the world if she could, right? More cancer drugs would be probably great. But so following her saga will be fascinating.
And it's a fascinating story, and you and your colleagues have done a great job, and I'm really grateful for you taking a few minutes out of your busy week to join us. That's Rolf Winkler, reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Rolf, thanks a lot.
Thank you, JD.